Hello, Ben here from Supercoach Insider, joined by a notorious man that likes to follow my bad bets. JD from Fantasy Take TV was just trashing me on the air. How are you tonight?
Just warming up for more body blows to come, no doubt. I mean, after some of the top 10s I've listened to so far, it's all been very cordial and very friendly, and I hope we can bring some hostile discourse to the conversations.
That's Chris's favorite too. It's blows on his body.
I see a Powerade. Is there vodka in that Powerade? I don't.
No, it's a subtle play on words. I do apologize, Chris. Well, look,
I was waiting to do my Supercoach Insider. I barely know it, and we've already gone so far past that.
Yeah. And
skip the bench talk.
If you haven't
talk is overrated.
We're going through our top 10 for each position or line. Today is the top 10 midfielders, which is going to be really popular, I believe, because it is a wide field. You have the top few of the 120 pluses, and then it really does thin out with a lot of potential, a lot of talent on people that can push and rival the top 10. Before I move on, SC Insider 100, you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. Also, all the audio platforms as well. Spotify, SoundCloud, Stitcher, you name it. And on the YouTube. JD, where can everyone find you, like you, shout you?
Oh, yeah, that was very quick. I'm on YouTube at Jackson Davey, Twitter on the same name. Otherwise, I joined the Fantasy Take TV podcast, which you can find on the Supercoach George channel and the Fantasy Take TV Twitter.
Boom.
Oh, I think the podcast also get uploaded to Spotify and all that stuff. But look, to be honest, I don't deal with that side, so don't ask.
YouTube's where it's at, buddy. YouTube's where it's at. Yeah, stick to it.
That's our bread and butter. I see. You don't want us cutting in on your turf, but it's okay for the vice versa. I see. That's all right.
Hey, there's enough love to share and show around, and
no, a rising tide floats all boats. So yeah, and you guys have always floated my boat.
Oh, bless you.
We are going
greatly appreciated, and vice versa. And we love actually conversing with a whole bunch of people that we generally talk to throughout the year, but everyone's so busy making content that sometimes we don't get to actually branch out and make enough content with others. So I think this has been really popular so far. So I do look forward to today.
Definitely my first podcast with someone with a man bun. So I think it's going to be really, really positive.
And also joining us is Machine Gun Kelly.
Wow, we are going off the rail. All right. So top 10.
Loose already. Top 10. JD, who's first on your top 10 list? So who's coming in 10th, the highest averaging player in the midfield?
Who's first on your top
10? Yeah, I know. I was
like,
I've thrown myself off ever since the first comment.
So coming in at number 10, I just have to do it. It's going to be Josh Kelly. We're putting him in at number 10. We're going to buy into the bounce back this year. The GWS
He's already upset.
Back. Leon Cameron in the mud. Now, Ben, I actually think we might have started him the same year where Leon Cameron had him in the half-forward line for 6 to 7 weeks. The man did everything he could. He was the absolute go to the half-forward line to scratch 95s, 100s each week, kicking game-winning goals. And then, yes, we traded him out. And then, yes, he was a top pod for the rest of the year. But Leon Cameron, the wicked witch of the West, is dead. And with it brings new life to... what are the little gremlins that live in? Anyway, GWS is going to good places this year, and Josh Kelly is going to lead the charge.
Cross movie quoted there,
yeah, that's all right. Just follow the wavelength, all right? Josh Kelly's all you need to come back to.
I like it.
So I'm guessing we saw on the weekend. They've got a group of 4, tight knit group. They're going to give them all the CBAs. You've got no Hopper, no Taranto, no Leon Cameron. Kelly's going to be getting 60% CBAs, and he's absolutely going to be in the top 10 at the end of the year.
All right. So what I'm hearing is he is forgiven, and you are proposing somewhat of a rebirth, because I do know when he gets a large percentage of CBAs, he averages extremely, extremely well. Now, it's funny you actually posed this, JD, and I would be upset, and I kind of threw it on for a bit of character. He is my 10th highest averaging midfielder this year as well.
Yeah,
all is forgiven in Jellytown.
Well, it's nothing to forgive for Jelly. Leon Cameron was the one that needs to repent. Josh Kelly now gets a chance to step out on his own and prove what he's made of.
Well, Josh Kelly's fly me to the moon, boys, because I've got him at 6.
Yeah, let's go. All right, good stuff.
I'm on board, and he's
Kelly
actually in my
love.
team now. He's like,
Yep.
I'm not sure he can go 36 disposals every week like he just did, but the last 2 years he's had 49 and 47% CBAs. He will have 65% plus. He's going to be, they've listed Canelio as the one that's going to be that sort of forward mid switch, which means it's going to be Green and Kelly's midfield 100% of the time. So I love Kelly as a pick. I think average, so his body's obviously now the issue because the average is going to be high. I actually have him at about 117, which would be a career best. I think he's 3 times gone about 114. So it would be a career best.
117 was his career best in 2019. Okay. And then he's had 3 other years with like a 114.
Yeah, perfect. So, wow, he's even done it before. Yep. And I think that he's a better player. He's got a better role. It's Josh Kelly. Like, we know what he's like. So, yeah, like I don't see there's a reason why he can't average there that high based on what his role is in the team. I just think that the only thing stopping him will be his body. So that's going to be the question mark. But again, 40 out of 42 games? I know he's had the soft tissues, and George will probably harp on about that at some description. There's no way he'd have him in his top 10.
I do have George's rankings, and he actually has him at 9.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow, that is impressive.
Now, Chris, I know you fancy yourself as a bit of a stats man, but I thought I'd bring some heat myself. We can go blow for blow here. So last year, 60% plus CBAs, Josh Kelly went 114 on 6 games. And in games where he had less than 40% CBAs, that was 7 games, he had a 92 average. That kind of shows the starkness, the contrast between when Jelly's on the ball getting those CBAs and when he's been pushed out to one of those wing half-forward roles. So, yes, I mean, if we're not seeing CBAs early, this is going to be a pick that we jump off quick, but he's also in my team for now.
Yeah, I mean, the danger for me in my team is that he also really fits a nice little niche and that I have like $582K and $800 or something like that. So it's like, he's like also like the perfect pick. But yeah, so it could be a little bit of optimism sprinkled in there. There is definitely a correlation between his CBAs and his score output. There always has been. When he was pushed to the wing, half forward, he's still a good player and he plays well for the team, but his scores drop off dramatically and it's just not the same. So now he has that role. There's no stopping him. So yeah, I think for 2 years running, me and Ben were both on the train of he's going to be the one averaging guy. Like he's got that scope. His next step is to be 125 average. I don't quite see that, but look, maybe. I love the fact that his price, and if you're getting on him early, it's just really, really good value. But I don't know. The other thing is, so if you have one of those other guys that's above him, are you really going to get to like round 3 and go, oh, you know what, I'm going to sideways to Jelly really quickly? Like, I just can't see jumping off a premium that you've invested in.
It'd have to be traveling real bad, or it'd have to be like one of the 700K guys that is going to drop like 50K week 3, if they fire a couple of duds or something.
Could be like a Clary to Kelly trade round 3 or something like that.
He'd make 120K. He'd make 120.
If you got like Bont, Steele, McRae, whoever else, like you're probably not sideways trading. They'd have to be real bad out of the block. So yeah.
No, exactly agree.
Alrighty, number 10 for you, Chris. Then.
Yeah, mate. Well, I think JD will love this one. I've got the GOAT himself coming in number 10. Will Setterfield. I just want to say.
Sorry, is my man bun too tight? Did I hear Will Setterfield?
Yeah, the veins.
I'm getting migraines.
Veins are No. But he's in my team. But no, that's not a thing.
That's not how we do top 10s, Chris. It's not about optimism. It's about projecting fantasy output.
JD, can I apologise because this is probably the shittest run pod I think we have done since the great summer of 2007. Like,
no need to apologise. I feel like I'm contributing to it. It's good to not be on my own content. I can kind of just do whatever I want. It's a bit of fun.
I love it. That's great.
Chris,
no,
stop.
So I do have Jack Steele
10. Okay, thank God.
Jack Steele.
All right. I was going to say.
So I suppose the thing with me with Jack Steele, I just really don't know what I'm getting from him right now. I know what he's capable of. I just don't know whether he's capable of doing that in this moment in his career. And I've sort of given him where I've actually placed him here is about 112, which is a slight bump on last year. But I'm just not sure I can get him to that sort of 120, definitely not 120 plus. Like my mind just doesn't go there. From 115 plus does it. I don't know, potentially. I know that last year a lot of his averages were restricted when he was hampered by injury. I know he slimmed down. He just didn't. He looked off, man, and I just can't see it right now. So yeah, that's just me probably going. You guys might have him more. I know that he's probably in a lot of people's teams as well, but I just don't see it quite there.
I think he's great value, but I am also like Roll's great. So many CBAs, it's ridiculous. And when the season comes, I'm sure he turns it up. But again, I'm with you as far as it didn't quite look right to me. And then I just get flashbacks of Paddy Cripps when he dropped too much weight, and then the next preseason is like, oh, I actually went too skinny, so now I need to kind of bulk up because I lost all of my strength and my difference as a player. So I actually don't even have him in my top 10, boys. I have him scraped out. I have him scraped out. Again,
So you've got
when you're
Setterfield
tossing
then.
up. So but again, there's a plethora or a plethora, however you want to say it, of people. And for me, I've got a lot of other guys getting towards that sort of 115 mark or around it. And he's, one side of the coin or the other. So for me, he's just out.
Yeah, okay. I'll throw in a different spin there. To be fair, I think this is valid. I probably see him as one of the ones with the wider range of outcomes. I have him all the way up at 6 at the moment. I do see him as bouncing back this year. And I think the main thing that I look at is that his average pre-injury was effectively 120 Supercoach, which is about what he did the year before. Then he had a couple of poor games, then he had the long layoff, and then he came back, and he wasn't awful over the back half, but it wasn't the same. It's much closer to what you're kind of predicting now around that 110 mark. So for me, I can kind of see it going either ways, where we get like a high 100s, low 110s through to back about 120. And I'm going optimistic on this one. I guess I am a little bit worried about the slimming down thing for the exact reason you spoke about. It's not always a good sign, and there were some concerns over how his preseason started. But we have an insider on the Discord that said, do not worry about Steele. He's ready to go for round 1. He's going to be good this year. He's fired up. So, yes, I think the other thing people look at was the poor preseason score from the weekend, just gone against the Bombers. But funnily enough, Saints played Essendon in the preseason game last year as well, and he did the exact same thing. He had a 80,
like an 81 or something.
Whatever, and then came into the season. His first round was slow, but then he went on that real tear. So I'm not worried about the preseason game. I am a little bit worried about the weight and what that means. But I'm going I guess I'm the most optimistic that he'll get back to closer to the 120.
I think he's not a bad pick regardless, because worst case scenario, you're paying what you're going to get out of him. So he's a super low risk pick. He's probably arguably the lowest risk pick in the midfield, because worst case scenario, you're going to go 110, right? So and with upside, like he does have upside. I'm worried that it's just not quite what everyone else is doing, and I want to try and get value where I can get it, and that's why I'm sort of and I reckon that the way that I'm looking at him in terms of he's going to be 10 is probably how I want to look at it. It's definitely a biased view of it. Like, these are negatives, therefore I'm going to look at it like this. Whereas if I wanted to be optimistic about it, I could be like, I could have all this statistical data to back up what he's previously done. So therefore, why am I influencing my decision based on what he looks like now and what he's done in the last 12 rounds? So
he could be 6th overall, and I wouldn't bat an eyelid. And he's at a price point where I think he's definitely good value. So I'm not going to judge anyone for going there or even suggesting it. It's the same way that I wouldn't be that surprised if Josh Kelly just banged out a season of a 123 average, because I still think he is that quality of a player that he is capable. When you're trying to kind of marry up a few different people, when you get into this top 10, particularly for mids, not too many of them keep repeating year after year after year. It's a heavy and hard business, especially in the midfield, to stay clean health and have a good role and dominate your peers. So it's very much a speculation and gut feel when you kind of put, hey, here's 1, 2, 3, or 5 compared to each other. Which one do you think is going to go ahead into that top 10? I think it's definitely very much opinionated. JD, who have we got for 9th for yourself?
Yeah, just quickly, one last thing on Steele. He's got that first spot. So regardless of where you see him, whether it's closer to 6 or out of the 10, he's probably one that you can just not start for that reason if you're on the fence about it. All right, number 9. I'm going to drop in Brayshaw at 9, which...
that's who I had 9. Nice work.
Yeah, okay. I don't know if this is going to be controversial or not, because It's a bit hard to know what his role is going to look like this year, and you can only see more tags coming his way. I guess showed some susceptibility to it and is probably the most important midfielder at Freo at the moment. But ever since he's joined the league, his average has increased each year. So 61, 71, 101, 107, 112 last year. And I think the natural progression does see him move up a few more points, potentially a few more points. Although that is predicated on him being able to work through tags and Freo kind of being as good or at least as competitive as they were last year. And so while I've got him at 9, I could see this backfiring and going the other way quite easily. But I do like Brayshaw and wanted to give a mention. So there he is, number 9.
Yeah, look, everything you said is completely accurate. There's two things that are currently running me against Brayshaw. So obviously the tag factor is there. He has a great start to the starting fixture, but some of those tags are also there. So, and some tags that we think are going to be there also from those lower fixtures. So, a little bit worried. I've St Kilda obviously round 1. He's gone 189 against them last year. I can't see Ross Lyon running into that game and not putting a tag on him. And that's just, again, that's foresight. We don't have any data to back that up. All we've got is, okay, well, Ross Lyon has tagged a lot before. Why wouldn't he do that now, knowing what he knows about Andrew Brayshaw?
And he's not running into 5 weeks. He's not running into 5 weeks of Owen memes either. I can guarantee you that. So he wants that win. He's like, I'm not going Owen, whatever.
I mean, so I did some stats earlier in the preseason that against top 8 sides last year, he averaged 123. But I don't see him being able to do that because part of that was Saints 189. So that might be a hugely inflated average that I'm looking at. The other thing is the mid splits. So Jaeger's come in and basically is the number 1 centre bounce mid. That's going to surprise me. Now I know he's obviously he's a race for round 1, or is he not playing round 1? And then Brody out of nowhere decided that he could actually run out games a lot better and have 10% more.
Wow, that was one preseason game. Like,
I know. I know. Ease up, Abdul.
I don't want to be sued for copyright infringement.
Absolutely. Look, now I don't know where that sits. This will be a really weird thing if all of a sudden Will Brody averages 10% more time on ground for the year. But he was fantastic last year as a brilliant clearance mid. So where does that leave Brayshaw? It sort of just has this open question mark where he averaged 112 last year. I think early in the preseason, I was like, he's going 115 to 120 easy. And now I'm like, maybe it's 115 cap. Maybe it's not all the way up to that 120 mark. And so I've cooled on the pick. But yeah, number 9 for me, I have him at about 114 average. 5.
I know I can answer your question. He's not in my top 10.
Okay,
you said you're not sure where that leaves him. So I was like, oh, sorry. That was me putting my hand up.
Sorry, we've got the storyteller, the fortune teller to tell us exactly where he's at.
I could see why you're confused because I think I was doing that for someone else, like with the 4. No, I don't have him in my top 10. I think
Fremantle. You were like, pick number 3, my lord. Pick number 3.
Number 3, my lord. I think he's maybe overcompensating for something. Good on Shrek.
That was a Shrek reference there, JD. Just saying. Yeah.
I've got 2 kids under 5. I have seen my fair share of Shrek reruns recently. Plus, not to mention that's what we've called Darcy for the longest time.
Also the title of Chris's autobiography. So for me, I think Fremantle are probably I think they're losing more games this year. I think they slide a little. O'Meara coming in, as Chris sort of said, was another concern of mine. High ceiling though, so I think he's very, very capable and just sort of slips out there for me, guys. So I do like him as a player.
Yeah, I think regardless of where you have him in the rankings, right, he's just one of those classic high variance players that can be tagged. So there's no reason to start him. You pick him up after a couple of bad games at some point throughout the year. So yeah, I
like a Petrarca or something like that. Wait, pick him up lows, and same as actually let's go for your 9. Same as my number 9.
Oliver, right?
Same as my number 9. Same thing. You avoid them. So Chris, who have you got for 9? Yours was the same, was it?
Yeah, I had Brayshaw. Yeah.
Okay, so I had Zach Merrett at number 9.
Okay. I knew that's exactly where you were heading with that. That lead in.
Yeah, the high variance. So
the second half goat, as we like to call him, top 5.
Yeah, exactly right. Top 5, second half. Yeah.
And I think he's just. I just like the way he plays. To be honest, I think last year he got much better at like running out games as well. And when he was against Brisbane, they paid him 0 regard, and you just watch him move contest from contest. I think it was the Beast Matheson was on him on the wing. And as they spread, he just literally went straight past and then kept running, went to the other side, and then was completely open in the goal square. And they gave him no attention at all. I just think he's an absolute great player as a captain. For me, I think he's great. Number 9.
See, the thing is, now that he's got the GOAT playing with him, like he takes all the defensive responsibility in that midfield, and he can just run off, just do it on his own. Just run around and get the ball, see ball, get ball. Don't worry about tackling. Don't worry about running defensively. Two-way is overrated for Zach Merrett these days.
Don't worry about playing more than 10 games ever in a season.
All right, so I have him at number 8, and I think the one thing that could actually make him somewhat of an interesting pick as a starting pick is the fact that he is captain this year, and that some of the comments in the preseason were around the defensive effort of Essendon's midfield, the work rate, and all that type of stuff. So I feel like he's in one of those situations where he has to probably come out and prove it. And his leadership style has always been like, follow me on the field, training standards, not inspirational speaker. So it feels like if they're going to set some standards around defensive pressure and work rate this year, it probably has to be led by Merrett. And that could mean that we see a faster start than what we normally see out of him or have seen the last couple of years. Or it could mean that his scoring goes backwards a little bit because he is doing more of the defensive stuff than what's normal. But although I'd hope they'd correct that because it's not where his bread and butter is. So I have him at number 8. Once again, it's not one of these picks I'm really entertaining as a starting option just because he's also once showed to be susceptible to tags and he's always been better in the second half of the year, although some of that could be due to circumstance rather than anything else. I did want to bring out a couple of fun facts. So in wins last year, Zach Merrett averaged 127, in losses 105. So
4-game sample size?
6 wins. 6 wins he played in last year. Thank you. And if now that we do have the GOAT lining up beside him, maybe we can get a couple more wins this year. Who knows?
Jack Steele, 28 in my half, buddy.
yeah. And then interestingly, he actually did better against top 8 sides last year than the bottom 10 side. So in the 10 top 8 games he played, he had a 118 average and just went 106 against the bottom 10 sides.
Yeah, Brisbane to thank for that.
Yeah, it's a bit unfortunate he can't play Essendon because the average would have evened up real quick.
I've got him averaging around about the same as last year. Like I don't know. The thing with Essendon, there's just so many promises. You must be the most frustrated supporter of all time.
I gave up having expectations for my side many years ago. It's kept me in good stead. Those that still get their hopes up each year are the ones that are disappointed.
Yeah, I agree. And look, there's just too much talk for so many years that I just can't see it yet. And I just need to see it. So for him, I just think he's a 110 merchant at this point.
Come on, wait. 2020 he went 115 and a half. 2 years ago 115, and then last year 112. So he's like 3-4 points down the last couple of years.
2020 that's not even a year you can say stats from.
Sure. But I'm saying like over the last 2 before last one, like 115, 112. I mean, do you want to it's not like 2020 was the only year that he's put up good numbers.
That's true.
If he starts well, I wouldn't mind trying to be one of the earlier ones to get on him.
But there's definitely merit to that.
By the way, one other reason not to start him, we've got Hawks round 1, and you'd think McGuinness probably goes to him over Parish. And then I think we've got Saints round 3. So Windhager should be back. And once again, you probably go to Merrett over someone else. So I think there's a good chance he gets tagged a couple of times early. And then you could look at...
Yeah, and you could probably pick him up super early as well. And I suppose the thing for people at home who are watching to take into consideration is that you keep an eye on that, because don't just think he's plodding along and not playing well because he's been tagged. You need to keep an eye on, watch the games or listen to the podcast or watch at home. Because we'll give you that information of, okay, well, yes, his score sucked, but here's the reasons why. And when he wasn't tagged, we did this. So even though he's only averaging 105, he's still going really at a really good level. Just when he's tagged, he's popped those lower games. Does he play those 2 teams at all later in the year? Do you know? That's something. How many tagged?
I think they play Hawks.
No, I don't think any of those are our doubles.
Yeah, so that's interesting because again, that's a classic back end that you could definitely jump on. But yeah, someone to keep an eye on, because what we know is that, yes, he's susceptible to a tag, but he can pump out some absolutely mammoth scores when he's not. So
that's right. No, they don't play Hawks twice, but they do play West Coast
Pies, West Coast GWS Port. Oh, North, yeah.
Yeah, because I think you play West Coast and North twice each in like the last 13 or 14 rounds. You pretty much
right. It's like round 11 and 12
juicy.
West Coast North, and then 21, 22 West Coast
juicy.
North.
I've actually circled that one on my calendar saying make sure I have all Essendon players from that round. Well, you're playing the bottom 2 teams twice. So out of say 11 rounds, you got 4 of them against Bunnies. Easy.
Did Clarko ever tag? Has he?
Yes, he has tags in the past. Yes. Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
So
it's not like it was a go-to, but yes, he's used various tags.
Yeah. Usually it's just journalists Shields, on the way out.
I think he's used Shields as a tag at one point. He's gone there, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought he normally just tags journalists on the way out. Just walks over.
When he can't find a wall.
I love that he didn't apologize. It's like I apologize, but I might do it again.
It's so bad. Oh, it's so bad.
The most Clarko thing you've ever heard.
Oh, it's like it was so tone deaf and like so insensitive. But like, let's not derail Supercoach talk with
extremely. But at least I acknowledge the fact that he probably knows himself and he can't promise he won't do it again. Because then he's like, well, then I'll get in more trouble. Like obviously, yes, not a great look.
Sorry. Merrett was at number 8 for me. He was 9 for you.
And I just have him outside. Yeah, I've got him
8 for you, Chris.
I actually have him at 12th. So no, I don't have him in my
number 8, Chris.
Jack McRae. So I just don't see the. I'm pretty negative on McRae in terms of his upside, but I just think he's still going to be a really good pick at that 115 level. He is what you're going to pay for him. I don't think that he's necessarily going to increase. There are a lot of people that love McRae, and that's fine. I just don't see it. The only evidence that we've had to support it has been Magneto changing around McRae like he's going out of fashion and continuously decreasing his CBAs. Even though he was actually the number 1 mid last year at the Dogs, he still decreased his mid time by 13% over the year. CBAs, I should say. So he was obviously pushed out to the wing, and that's what we saw in the second half of the year. I did like a really stupid, way too much in-depth study of him as a midfielder. It looked like what Bevo was doing is basically playing him in chunks in CBAs. So he'd be a more prominent CBA midfielder for 4 weeks, and then he'd drop back for 3 weeks. And he's done this with a bunch of his different mids to try and freshen them up for the finals. And it looked like he was in their preferred mix at the end where he was averaging about 68, 70% of CBAs, but he dropped him right down before that just to freshen him up to get him ready for finals. And that seems to be what he does. So I just don't think that with Bevo's mindset, he's going to be able to get 70+% CBAs, which is what he's needed to go that sort of 120 plus. I think that he's still definitely like 115, and he'll have patches where he'll go 125, 130 plus average, 100%. But over the course of the season, I don't think you're going to see that too much. That's just my personal opinion. People hate me for it, but that's cool. I'm okay with it.
I'm sure he appreciated the freshen up for an early exit in finals too. He's like, oh, what a great off season. I feel rejuvenated for a second week exit. JD, where do you have McRae?
I have him much higher, actually. I think I've got him all the way up at 5 at the moment. Putting a little bit of respect on McRae's name, because prior to last year, he had 4 years where he averaged about 125 across those 4.
Yeah.
So to drop off to 115, I think is probably too much in 1 year, and we see some regression the other way. I probably have him going closer to the 120-ish mark if I was to put a number on it, maybe high 110s. And look, if he does, I can also see the reason why I wouldn't do it this year. If Clarko persists with the sharing CBA's route, and even with Dunkley's departure, they put someone else in. But I just think that they're not going to do that. They're going to raise the CBAs of their star mids and settle on a mix, which is what we've seen a lot of the other top teams do, like Geelong, basically. But yeah, I think the CBAs go back up this year, albeit a little bit, not to the mid-70s, and then we see the scoring come back a little bit with it as well.
I think we've put Finn McGuinness on you, JD, because I think you just got tagged into saying Clarko's coaching the Dogs. I was like, what's going on?
Bevo, yep, sorry.
Yeah, good old.
No, I'm still laughing at Magneto. I might steal that.
One of Chris's more insightful analogies, I think. For me, I've got McRae at 8 as well, and I can understand the rationale for people expecting him to go up, but it's more of his I guess, ability to go inside and outside, and with Bevo shifting those markers, like Chris was saying as well. I don't know. I think Bailey Smith and a few of these others, Liberatore has to be inside. He's not really great anywhere else, to be honest. So then Bont's that real high variance, impact sort of player. Plus, he's too tall to now spend too much time forward as well. They don't need him forward as they used to. So I think he is now more prominent in there, which has come out. So then it's like, well, McRae will probably be like inside, outside, mixing with Bailey Smith. Treloar will probably come into the guts at times, maybe on the wing at others, maybe even half forward flank for Treloar. So I think they'll just kind of mix it up a little bit through there. So that's the only reason is that he's at 8th for me is McRae. And it's not that I don't like him. It's just I'm not sure if there's enough points to share through the main CBA part, whether that'll push him from the 115 to the 120 pluses.
That's fair.
I mean, personally, like I personally believe that McRae is a better midfielder than he's probably. I think that he's better than, say, Libba in terms of midfield ability, but in terms of and accumulation. But obviously, Libba's a great clearance player, and they can't just not have him in that mix. I also think Bailey Smith is much better on the outside, but he seems to be preferred. As in the one game sample size we have in a preseason game, he seems to be getting way more CBAs than I thought he would. I would prefer Bailey Smith to be a complete wing player. He's got the tank to be able to do it, but maybe age is coming. I don't know. What McRae's only 28, going 29. Like he's got the tank. I'm the AFL coach.
He was fading out of games last year, and he's back at half the year was definitely worse, and they rested him up as part of that. So I don't know. I have a feeling that we probably hit the point in his career where he starts declining. I just think that the 10-point decrease in 1 year was probably
a lot. Yeah.
Was too much, and you just see regression the other way this year. But I think he starts declining just in general from.
I think they get the mix.
What do you have him at, JD? Sorry.
I have him at 5, but I actually realized that I've got. I think like high 110s, 120s.
Oh yeah, so
like 120 or high 10.
It's not a 125. I don't think he gets back to that. I also just realized if I've got at number 4, I probably wouldn't have there anymore. We can talk about him.
That's fine.
That's all right.
It's all right, JD. I actually listened to you, Chris. Those things on your head, they're called ears, and they're free to use at any time. Yeah, I think Bailey Smith provides that point of difference for them, though, because you have Libba getting that, like, back Libba in to get the clearance. Bontempelli is such a good user and silky as far as, not evasive. And then if you do get out the front of that stoppage, then who do you want? Like McRae labouring through at a fairly good speed, or Mullet Man with absolutely lightning speed, absolutely breaking that line. And I think that's the point of difference is if they
see that you use that line, breaking the line, hey, buddy. That's only you could pull that pun as it was nothing. Only you could do that. That's well done.
Like a deer in headlights. No, I didn't see that one coming. So that's the only difference for me. Now, I think we're up to number 7, I think. And JD, we haven't got your 7, I believe, or Chris.
Okay, we're up to 7. Okay, I feel like he's going to be much higher on at least one of your lists, maybe both. But I've got Lachie Neale falling this year, all the way to 7.
Wow. Okay. I don't
Rationale?
have him there.
Rationale for 7?
Okay, yeah, let's go. The recipe to beating the Lions.
Let's go.
The recipe to beating Lions last year was tagging Neale, and some teams seem to figure that out in the second half of the year, and there seems to be more taggers this year. So I just think that he's not going to be allowed to get off the chain to put up the 180s, the 160s that we saw routinely last year. Yes, there's going to be some teams that want to go head-to-head or don't learn their lesson. But even Essendon, he dropped a 200 on us in round 2, and then the second time around we tagged him, I think, with Caldwell for a 90. So I think there's going to be a lot of clubs that take note and put attention to Lachie Neale. So that's part 1. And then part 2, I think Dunkley coming in does affect him, while I think he's going to be more efficient with Dunkley in there because it's just another person to win the ball, get it out, create space, all that type of stuff. But I do think that when you put lots of these good guys together, it in general hurts them more than it helps them. So I think, Dunkley taking up some of the midfield air hurts him, and then more teams should be tagging him, which I think will also hurt him. And we see him kind of drop off from the heights that we got last year.
Yeah, look, I have him 4th, so I do have him higher, but I do agree with you. I've actually got him listed here as a slight regression, but with Dunkley's clearance ability will mean that he's going to be the guy. There's only so many clearances in a game, right?
Mhm.
So if Lachie Neale's averaging X amount because he's the number one clearance midfielder of the club, but then I know that new midfielder comes in, and I believe personally that Dunkley will average the most clearances for them. So then naturally that means that he's going to have less share of the pie. So I'm not sure what that results to in terms of points. Lachie Neale has shown that he's an accumulator regardless. So he's going to be able to get the ball and find the ball. Is he going to be able to compensate for his lack of clearances, which is obviously directly related to big SC numbers? Clearances are one of the largest factors for Supercoach scoring. Or is it can he get enough outside ball to compensate that? I don't know. So I still have him at fourth, but he's the lowest of the guys that I think can go into that 120 bracket, and I've actually got him to about 118. So I don't have him super high, but not not in that realm of super premiums that we've obviously seen him be before.
So what number do you have him, Chris?
I have fourth.
You have him at fourth. Okay, so I have him sliding as well. I have him at fifth. Similar reasons, I think, with the tag and the rest of it. With Dunkley coming in, I think it helps him as far as share that load a little bit, and he is, I think, pushing towards that 30 mark. So I still
30,
like him.
mate.
Yeah, so I still like it in general. The one thing that kind of tempts me a little bit is, well, they have the first buy, so I'm keen to kind of look at it as an upgrade after that point. Lions don't have many home games to start. I think they have 6 home games out of the first 15. And the one thing that is a positive, though, is that Lachie Neale had the third highest win-loss Supercoach differential in the first 50, the top 50 averaging players. So when they lost, he averaged 101.8, which is where the tagging comes in and why people were doing it. And when they won, he averaged 132.9. And if they're going to win more games this year and finish top of the ladder, so I'm like, okay, well, maybe there is a little bit of meat on the bone if they win. And the only two that were actually ahead of that was Petrarca, so no shocks there. And leading the top 50 was actually Cornelio, which is probably more to do with the role change, but he averaged 40 points difference between wins and losses.
Yeah, so I mean, you knocked it nail on the head there with his tagging. So he's going to be the one that gets a tag, which is because last year there was basically proven that you stop Neale, you stop Brisbane. So, however, there could be a shift in that because stopping Neale may just mean that Dunkley goes off the chain and you don't beat Brisbane. So maybe that relaxes towards the back end of the season. I'm sort of in two minds with that because I love him as an upgrade target, but then I've also got years of stats saying that he's a front half of the season merchant and just goes nuts for the first 6 weeks and then completely dies. So I don't know where I sit with that, and it's really only just it sort of scares me as the pick. I actually had him in my team reveal, one of my 7 team reveals that I've done. I'm not sure which one, but I'm not sure. I don't know where I sit with it its totality. I do like him as an upgrade target, but you'd be backing in a guy who historically doesn't finish the season well to be able to go better than he's ever done before. And I'm not. Yeah, I don't know. Don't know if I can sell that to myself at this stage. I might be able to do it later in the season when I'm looking at the upgrade targets and there's absolutely nothing to pick from, and I'm like, okay, well, Lachie Neale it is. So yeah, we'll see. But yeah, I definitely think he's sliding. Just I have him obviously slightly higher than you guys do. But yeah, I don't think his value at his price.
No.
It's 676. Are you going to get what you get out of him? Maybe. He's probably sliding. You'll probably be able to pick him up just over 600k, maybe just under, pretty easily, I think.
I get the feeling that he won't hurt you as a starting pick. It's just that you're going to probably miss out on someone that was better value.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that.
Definitely.
And he's low ownership, isn't he? He's like 19%, which is like, I think unheard of for the past 3-4 years in terms of Lachie Neale. So, yeah, not bad at all.
Even McRae's ownership's taken a bit of a hit. Chris, who do you have at? What are we on? 7?
Tom Green, mate. I'm a big. Yeah. I love him. I just see, obviously, this is a big like swing for the fences type pick. I see him averaging 115 plus. I think he'll get attention through the season, and let's say that it's not like a complete walk in the park, but I think he's probably the closest version to Clayton Oliver that we have. And all of his junior stats point to the fact that he's an absolute, and his current stats, his contested ball ratio, his absolute elite at, which at all of the Supercoach midfielder stats that you want, he's completely like number one by a fair margin. Finally getting the role is a different thing. obviously he still was technically the number one midfielder at GWS with all their changes and 17 midfielders that they ran through there with, I think it ended up being 58% CBAs for the season. That's off the top of my head.
So it's
He will
less.
be he will be easily 65 to 70%, possibly more. He's probably going to be the number one CBA midfielder for the season for them. And if I say that Kelly's getting 65%, I only see Tom Green getting more than that. The only thing that's really going to weigh him down in terms of his ability to score is going to be his tank. So maybe back in the season, he's not able to do it as he was in the front half. I even noticed that he sort of used it to his advantage a bit in the preseason game, but he was a little bit gassed like in parts of quarters and he's laboring behind the play, but just got lucky enough that the ball happened to find him rather than him finding the ball. So how does that work long term? And do they rotate him more? Does that mean he drops out of that midfield rotation as much? I don't really know what they're going to do with that, but he definitely needs to still work on his tank, even though he has obviously shedded a few kilos and been running PBs in terms of his time trials and obviously playing out of his skin. So yeah, 115 is where I see him as making it. I don't know. Do you guys have him even in your top 10? Like that's probably a question.
I don't.
I've had him in my team all preseason, and there's no chance I move him out. But I don't have him in the top 10. I couldn't make a bold enough call to put him in. But there's totally paths where I see it happening. I mean, I think if you look at him compared to the top 10 midfielders, he's only about 4 or 5 disposals behind, like per game, behind their numbers, but pretty much ticks all the other boxes on contested rate, efficiency, tackles, all the other numbers. So yeah, it's just about get that extra time in the midfield. How much
you got to pump those numbers up?
Yeah, how much more does come with it?
Rookie numbers.
Now, surprisingly, do you want to guess what his time on ground was last year? Do you know?
I don't actually know off the top of my head.
It was 82%. Surprisingly not a bad number. So his tank was talked about a lot, and yes, he looks better. But I think a lot of the fade came from just him getting beaten up playing right. It's probably also why his time on the ground was so high as well. They're just playing him in abnormal roles. So I think if you just refocus that into midfield time, he's going to gun it this year.
Like he should be mirroring Cripps in terms of his role, right? So he should be very high CBA midfielder and stints forward where he really impacts as a marking tool. Rest forward essentially for, let's say 10% per game. If he can do that, I think that there's huge scope in his ability, but then it's his body. Can he take the load? That's the next question. And we just haven't seen that yet. So yeah, I think we all have him, right? Like all have Tom Green.
Yeah.
The
value is that high.
Though? Yeah.
I got 110.
Yeah, I would. So I think about 110. So it's that 8 to 20 range,
Yeah. There's no one at his price that's better value because his upside is so unknown, right? So he could go. Would we be sitting here saying what's happening with Tom Green if round 8 he's averaging 125? Like, I know that's.
It wouldn't surprise me. I think he started off the year like pretty similarly, didn't he, last year? Over the first 6 weeks, he was 122 or something. Yeah, he was 122 over the first 6. Yeah. I think it's like even more because he had a 164 and a 147 in the first 3, something like that. He's got the ceiling.
The first 3 rounds were absolutely huge, and then a 92, 115, 108, 107. So the first part of the season was absolutely crazy. As Chris mentioned, so 58%, you were correct there, Chris. And GWS had the lowest amount of CBA for that was their number one midfielder.
Yes.
And 58% was the lowest in the entire competition for their number one midfielder as far as a percentage. And that's funny because even Geelong try and really spread their load a lot, and even they weren't that bad. So
part of that obviously comes with, say, Cornelio for the first 6 weeks obviously didn't have any midfield time, and then bang, I think it was like 74 or 75% after that. So yeah, you can read into a lot of that, but you do have to take the whole season into context. But yeah, look, I see a lot of growth. I don't know where I put him. I kind of just went dartboard. I think that's probably where it sits. But some of these picks you can probably take with that. I'd still be happy with 110. He fits in nicely at an M8.
Don't backtrack now. Don't pussy out. 115.
No, I'm saying
I love it. I'm just glad we got to talk about Tom Green. So yeah,
I know. I nearly put him at 10, but then I was like, Jelly's gonna average more, unfortunately.
Well, that's a given, but Jelly's the GOAT, so that's fine.
Yeah, newly forgiven.
Well, now that
have
Will
you-
Setterfield's not on the team anymore.
Oh,
No, he's still there. He's still there. He's sitting there quite nicely at M5. It's nice. Very nice.
any opportunity to drop it. Okay, 7. Have you given us 7, JD?
Yeah, Neale was 7. Yep.
So Neale was your 7. I have Mills at 7. And
Okay.
mainly because I still rate him highly. I just, as far as him doing the role and him doing the whole captain thing, with Goulden and with the rise of Warner, etc., I'm not sure if he's going to have to do as much on his own. So if the defensive line holds up and the rest of it, then I think it's probably not going to be too much of an issue. But we've seen the commentary as well, where it's not the coach saying, "Oh, hey, like go and plug some holes." It's pretty much him going, "Hey guys, you are leaking goals. I'm now back here to tell you what's what," and then command you. So if Sydney are, not winning as many games as they did last year, then he might do that more often, especially if some of those other guys are taking the load and they don't need him as much. So it's not a reflection of his skills, because I still highly rate Mills. It's more of I'm not sure he has to carry the lone burden, which might just cause a little bit more of an even distribution, and still a really good score, but just a little bit of a slide for me.
Yeah, and look, I actually don't have him in that 10. There's a few reasons for that. I was hot. Ben, I was absolutely hot on Mills for ages because I just saw upside galore based on a few different stats, but namely his CBA rate last year. He actually only had 56% CBAs for the season. And in games
he
where
was the lowest of last year's top 8 in terms
insane.
of CBAs. Yeah.
But most of that was because up until round 12, he was averaging like 65 or 64% CBA. So he's actually considerably higher in the front half of the year where he was averaging really, really well. And then at round 12, his role shifted basically. And I don't know if this was due to runs or what they saw in the team, or they wanted Warner obviously came in and was averaging more CBAs. And so his roles kind of shifted, and he never had a single game over 70% CBAs for the rest of the season. And his scores just went like this for the rest. And it would go up when he had a good CBA game and then go down when he had a bad CBA game, and so on and so forth. And unfortunately, I don't see that changing. I don't see him going higher anymore. I actually had a view of, surely you get Mills in there as he's their number one mid. He's the guy that's going to drive them forward. But then obviously Goulden's come out of nowhere with an amazing preseason. Warner's only going to get more CBAs, which is a given in my opinion. Rowbottom, they obviously want to get more CBAs into. Parker doesn't seem to be moving for whatever reason, and I don't know why. I think he's probably best utilized for them now moving forward as a forward, or as a forward that pinch hits in the midfield, as opposed to a mid that pinch hits in the forward line. But yeah, I just don't see any of that with Mills. I don't, and the evidence so far has suggested that Mills isn't going to get that uptick. They're going to use him in different roles, and they're going to just basically use him at where the team needs him, not necessarily where he's going to score Supercoach points. And so that's my reasoning. I think he's probably around that 110 mark, could be even less, to be completely honest. But
JD support or?
Yeah, no, so he's not in my 10. I think I had him as like an honourable mention around the 12 mark, and it's pretty much the exact same reason that Warner was the big one. So Warner had something like no games over 50% CBAs until about round 10, and then he's the one that ticked up to 70% as Mills dropped off. You can't see them taking CBAs away from Warner, and if they're going to be putting Goulden through there too, yes, there's players like Papley and Heaney that they use a little bit at times that maybe that's whose CBAs Goulden takes. But I think the reality is it's probably a bit of Mills as well, who could play on the wing, play in defence, and can float around to wherever's needed. So I think his flexibility is going to be the death of him from a Supercoach perspective. No knock on him as a player. It's a little bit like Neale. I don't think because they're going backwards in Supercoach, they're regressing as players this year. It's just not as fantasy-friendly roles as what they've had in previous seasons.
Yeah, that team balance. I think Papley had about 35%, and I think Heaney had about 14%.
Yeah,
and Heaney's definitely dropped off. I think he only had 4% on the practice game, which is pretty much only because I think Mills wasn't really playing. So I expect Heaney to get bugger all.
They tried to force Heaney to be a midfielder, but then realized he's actually not really a good midfielder at all anyway. So why are we trying to force this into his role? They just want to use his ball winging ability that he was up in the forward line, try to transfer that into midfield. But then they were playing him as a defensive side midfielder. I was like, I don't understand what are you doing? Like, what is it? This doesn't make any sense to me.
I mean, it's the allure of the Dustin Martin, Petrarca, De Goey. They're trying to, the same thing. Like, you got this bigger forward that's got the allure of they can play midfield, and I just think he is better as a half forward that pushes up onto the ball when required, rather than actually being a mid that spits forward.
Well, it
Yeah,
got Jake
absolutely.
Stringer a gig for a little while, so anything's possible.
And Stringer's bloody good in that role too. He just
Yeah.
can't get on the
He's
park.
absolutely
He just can't
fantastic.
get on the park. And
Yeah. But I think even now as they get older, you see, you know, Dusty is too valuable forward, and Petrarca, they're starting to talk, well, he's still damaging forward, so let's put him forward more. And even with Heaney, it's like, okay, wonderful. Someone else can win the clearance and kick it forward. It's like, well, who do you want trying to mark it? Heaney kicking out of the forward 50, out of the, you know, CBA to, you know, someone who's not as good. You'd rather back in like a Rowbottom or a Goulden or someone else, and then have Heaney's aerial ability and competitiveness to win those one-on-ones in the air and stuff to actually shine through. And that's where the team balance sort of really comes into it. Okay, so that's 7 down for me and you two guys. Chris, I think so JD, we've already got your 6 and 5,
I had
don't we? I think
Steele at 6, McRae at 5. Yep.
5. So Chris,
So
your
my 6 was Kelly. So and I do have
so
a
my
5,
6,
but I'll wait for that.
my 6 is a little bit outlandish, and it's based on potential. It's definitely not based on preseason. It's definitely there might be some ice
Is it
involved.
Tom Green? Because we've already gone through.
No. There might have been a little bit of ice involved, but last year pre-injury was absolutely setting it alight after a quiet first few rounds. I just think the high ceiling is there. I really rate him as a player, and he's someone for me, if he gets a good run at it, could push 116 to 118, which is where I have him sort of pegged. Now I'm going to disregard the ice on a cuff. Apparently, he just copped
Is
the
it
corky.
Hugh McCluggage?
Darcy Parish.
You're going
Darcy
Parish.
Parish.
Oh,
is
I
wow,
was
my-
so confused. I could. Okay.
Darcy Parish is my 6th highest averaging midfielder.
He was someone that was in my top 6 or 5 until the last little stretch, and he's now not even mentioned in the top 12.
I'm holding the faith.
Let's hear some Parish reasoning here. Let's go.
I'm holding the faith. It's
You
based
just
faith.
It's on
faith.
No,
okay.
no, it's not completely blind faith, but
I mean, why not put Setterfield back at 10 then? We're just going on faith. We don't need eye tests or stats or injury history.
Setterfield's average more than Parish. Let's go.
no.
No.
You want to make that bad bet? Is that what's happening here, Chris?
No. Look.
Well, what is he?
eye
He's
test
20, he's
tells me
25 and a half.
He
Right,
looked
average
good in that first game.
Average 114.1 the year before. Right, so had a high sort of ceiling game through here. Even when we look at last year, he started off a little bit slow with the 99, 110, 97. And then before he got injured on 51. So his true average is actually more like 115, which is bordering on, I think it's McRae and Bontempelli, like just short of that anyway. So that automatically makes him nearly a top 8 if he stays fit. But from round 4 to round 11, he went 121, 113, 133, 111, 139, 109, 128, 142. And then was obviously injured, only had like a couple little rounds in the back end of that, and it really tailed his average down. So potential-wise, if he actually gets and stays fit, which is very questionable, I do agree, but I believe his average is definitely in that scope with the high ceiling, as seen by, was it 2021 as well? He has the game and the style to average really well.
Look, I mean, the scoring is there. I'll be honest right off the bat and say that I will not endorse the pick. But I am completely burnt by him the last 2 seasons. I brought him in 2 seasons ago. At the buys, I think he was averaging, he had a super hot, I remember him absolutely cooking us in the Anzac Day game. I think he got like 140 or 150. And he went on that heat. I think he was averaging a 140 over like 6 weeks, something stupid. And I was like, all right, I'm going to ride this train home. I spent buckets to get him because he was like 640K or something stupid. And then he burnt me for the rest of the year. I think he averaged like 103 or something stupid for the rest of the season. And then last year, I picked him up when he got his 51. So he was going on a great run. I pick him up. He immediately got injured, missed the next week. So I had to play a rookie on field. I traded him out. I traded him out straight away. I was like, no, I'm not doing this.
Yeah. I mean, it's unlike someone from the Pies to, buy someone that actually pay way too much and then have to trade them out.
That is exactly my MO.
Mate, you and Noble must get along well.
We should pay his salary as well. Why not?
Yeah. Pay for him to play for my team. That's good.
Oh,
That's good.
Man. So I can't. I've been burnt twice, and twice bitten. Not interested. I can't do it. The scoring's there. Is the role there this year? I don't know anymore because, so again, we have a 1-game sample size of data. So what we saw was 2 things. First of all, they were basically trying Perkins and Setterfield in that sort of 4th midfield role. Steele was played a little bit outside, and then you have obviously Merrett and Parish. And Steele's an insanely good clearance player, but his use and his how do I say this? His inconsistency is just too high. It's the variance is like I'd be super frustrated as an Essendon supporter. Like, because you see these games where Steele is like the best mid in the comp, and you're like, what is happening here? This is not the Steele from last week who turned it over 15 times in a row. I don't get it.
I mean, the Parker incident last year was the turnaround because Steele was actually very solid through the back half of the year. The consistency actually leveled out a lot. But yes, you're right. Like the inconsistency with both his kicking and the week-to-week performance has been an interesting spectator sport.
And we know that Parish obviously can play forward. He played forward for most of his early career. Steele's played off the half forward line. So I wonder what that split looks like. Is you have a decrease in CBAs? Yeah. Do they want Perkins in there more? I love Perkins second half of that game. I thought he was fantastic. Super elite with his ball use. Really tight, great in tight as well. He adds that height to that midfield that the other 3 don't have. Obviously, all 3 of those guys are below 183 centimeters. I wonder what they want to do with their mid-mix moving forward. I just don't know. And I don't think Parish necessarily gets the same role. And so that's why I'm sort of like also, I don't have enough information to make an informed decision. Though, he did look, it was a Gold Coast you guys played first in that. He looked fantastic in that game. He looked really, really good. So, yeah, there's a lot of question marks. I'm not saying it can't happen because, and I know a lot of people are on him preseason. Do you know what percentage of teams he's currently in? I don't have that stat.
2 or 3%. I think he was 3. He might have dropped. He might have dropped to 2 now.
So your perception's getting warped because I think amongst like serious super coaches, especially on Twitter, he was popping up on a lot of teams. He was in mine for a bit as well. But outside of that, no one had any interest.
I had him for a few weeks,
Yeah. And I think it's all the same. Like we all know what his best scoring looks like. And the talk from Scott being that he's going to play the players in their best positions. And it's like, okay, so Parish is going to be on the ball like 80% of the time, right?
Yeah, right.
But it seems like that's probably not the case. And it looks like they might be going for more that 5 midfield rotation. So it'd be Parish, Merrett, Setterfield, Steele, and then Caldwell. And then, maybe even Perkins. They still got Hobbs to come back at some point as well, who they did want to get CBAs into. So, I think that's the main concern for Parish at this point. It looks like there may be more mids getting rotations through. He had 76% CBAs last year, and I think it's actually even more if you take out the injury affected game, I want to say.
Yep.
So is it going to be that high again this year, or is it going to be more like high 60s? And if it's high 60s, then maybe the scoring isn't as good as it has been in previous years. I think he's once again, he's quite a high range of outcomes. Like he could still end up 115, high 110s, but I think he could also be close to the 110 mark and just not be that good.
Yeah, I completely agree with that sentiment. That was a well-rounded chat about someone without making any jokes, I feel like.
Apart from the ones at your expense. But
you're welcome for me.
That's common. That's common space.
Used to that.
Yeah.
Chris, your 5?
My 5. Sorry, let me pull up my list again, guys. 5. Oh, debate. Clayton Oliver, number 5, guys. Let's go. I'm ready for the Clayton Oliver chat. And before you start commenting on your YouTube channel, oh, you fucking Clayton Oliver. All right, just bear with us, all right? Because JD, you've probably noticed my chat in the Discord that I've had with quite a few members. Not necessarily slandering Clayton Oliver in terms of his ability to rack up the ball or his ability as a player, but his role in the team has a huge question mark. And we've now got 4 bits of information saying that Clayton Oliver is not going to have the same role that he had last year. So early in the preseason, one of the coaches came out and said, we're going to be trialing rotating more guys through that midfield mix. We realized that we didn't play our best in the second part of the season. I think they were 10-2 and then basically trailed off. So they held that same mid-rotation the whole way through. They saw what Geelong did and were like, we need to do that, which is generally what teams do. They look at the Premier, what did Geelong do differently than everybody else? Well, they didn't fade in the finals. They actually improved. How did they do that? Oh, well, they had a large rotation of midfielders go through. All right, well, maybe that's what we need to do. We need to, play our mids a little bit less. Clayton Oliver was the first by a long, I think Neale was slightly almost the same. He was the first, 87% CBA midfielder to get an average of 127. Don't quote me on that. So what do we see that regression look like? Well, we've had a little bit of exposure with that. So the second piece of information is, Clayton Oliver comes in last week and he plays 65% CBAs, plays a little bit off the half back line. That I think is more of a trial. I don't think it's going to be something like 65%, but I do see like a regression to say maybe 10 to 15%. So that works out to be somewhere between 72 to 77% CBAs. What does that do to his scoring? What we also know is Clayton Oliver averaged the most contested possessions and clearances last year. So if you take 10 to 15% of the opportunity out of that and give him, even replace that ball that he was getting with uncontested possessions, it has to impact his average negatively. So he's not going to be that 127, 128 player. It will regress somewhat. How much is that? I don't know, but I don't have the information. We also then had Christian Petrarca obviously come on. He did an interview saying, I'm going to be playing a different role. Oliver's going to be playing a different role. We're going to be trying different things, blah, blah, blah. So it's not just like we saw one match have to make all of our decisions on that. They've literally been talking about this the entire preseason. I do still think that he's going to be, somewhere between 115 to 120 in terms of average. Don't know where he ends with that. That will be based on his role. And I still think he's, not a bad option considering you're still going to get a really good average out of him. But I don't expect that uber premium result out of him, that 120 plus. I don't expect that from him based on his average currently.
Oh, some people overreact as well. I mean, there's a little speed bump, or let's call it a podhole. Some people see a little podhole in the road and Chris is veering off at 120 Ks an hour sideways at 90 degrees.
I mean, there's also his 700K price tag, but
the price tag is definitely an issue. We're talking about average here, right? That's a different thing. Don't talk strategy and prices for a salary format in an overall argument.
Hey.
Right? You're better than that.
I've listened to you boys for a while. Chris will do anything to win an argument, all right? There's nothing off limits.
I can object. Why?
Very
devastating to my case. Good call.
Even if he has to talk over you or throw slander or anything he can do. Okay, so now some people might veer off the road 120 Ks an hour like Chris, but I don't need to worry because also I have run flats. Clary going over, changing roles slightly, it's going to do nothing. He can go straight over that pothole. He can go straight over that pothole and just fix himself just fine. So I do see a slight regression a little bit. However, wherever you put Clary, I think he will still score well. Salary format is definitely an issue. The same coach that Petrarca and other people were quoting, the midfield coach did say, in theory, that is what they were trying to do to avoid burnout or because they felt they didn't have the energy to continue out the season last year. Right now, it's all speculative. So if they start off the season and things aren't going well, then that midfield coach is automatically under pressure to keep his job or to actually fix it. And the easiest thing that you could fix is throw Clary straight on that ball full time. And when Salem's back in, I don't think you put him in the back line anyway. You're not going to be resting your best player on the bench. So my theory is that it's well and true good in hindsight and in theory to put some measures in place. But when push comes to shove and when the season's actually going, I still think Clayton will still get a good enough chunk or do well in other areas because the quality players, they score regardless.
Well, I just thought I'd let you know that run flats only actually get you an extra 80 kilometers, bro. So maybe you need to rethink that analogy. But, good for you. Good for you.
Chris is used to carrying around a tire. Sorry, JD.
So, where did you have him ranked?
I have him fifth. I have him averaging
about. I got that, Chris. I was at Ben.
Sorry,
Ben's
number two. I got him second overall. Second overall.
Yeah. Sorry, it's not all about you. We've got main character syndrome over there. I have him at number 3 as well. So I also have him regressing a little bit. I'm not that worried about the hand. I'm not that worried about the role stuff. But the reality is, he had 86% CBAs, and I do think it's probably in their best interest that they put more people through there. The hands may come into play a little bit. I don't think any of this stuff's too concerning. I still think he's very good in terms of average, he's been top 3 the last 3 years. He's still like 25, 26. So you're not seeing any fall off from that. And to be honest, I don't see that many guys going into the 120s this year. And I think regardless of whether his role gets played around a little bit, I find it really hard to see him going out of the 120 range into the 110s. So he just seems like really safe for me over the others. I'm actually curious, Chris, to like hear 4 names that you think outdo Oliver this year, because while I have him going backwards, and I definitely don't think he's a good start in. Actually, I don't think any 700k guys are a good start in the classic format. Yeah, I'd be surprised to have that many guys ahead of him.
I'm trying to think of who that for us as well. I've got 3 people that are in that sort of top 4 range.
I've already given you the 4th, which was Lachie Neale. So,
okay, right. So that makes sense.
That's reasonable. I guess that's reasonable. Yep.
I was going to say, Jesus.
I, on my list, I have Lachie Neale averaging 1 point per game more. So it's not like it's a big chunk. So, yeah.
Okay, and we've already had JD. I think we've had your 4th as well, have we? So I think are we up to 3s?
No, we haven't had my 4th, but my 4th is the one that I actually wouldn't have here. This is probably a little legacy. It's like Touk Miller is at 4, but I don't think he's going to be top 4. And to be honest, I could see myself moving him closer towards 8 at the moment. A little bit worried about him coming off the hamstring, but the thing that I'm even more worried about than that is Alex Davies playing. So do either of you have Miller on your list before we?
Yeah, I have him at 3. So you keep going, and then I'll tell you.
Yeah, I have him at 3 as well. Davies did great while the gun was having a rest.
Okay, so do you know he splits with and without Alex Davies? So 117 with, 128 without. That was 15 games with him, 7 games without him. So I'm a little bit worried about them bringing in Davies and deepening their midfield rotations, because that's where Davies plays. That has a little bit of a knock on Miller, and so you see some scoring kind of go backwards as a result of Davies playing this year.
I'll tell you where I do agree before Chris talks about his. I am also worried about Touk. Apart from, I like his, generally the stamina and the injury does concern me a little bit. I'm also worried about the improvement of Raul and Anderson as well.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Touk's lucky that he can still win the ball inside and outside, but Raul and Anderson could be a very, very, very formidable duo where if he's winning the clearance, it's like, well, wonderful. Touk, you just run next to me while, Raul's getting the clearance. Or when you get to the outside, it's like they're both there, but then Anderson's on the opposite side, also running past for a receive or whatever it might be. So I am concerned with the improve of youth. I do really rate Davies as a player, though. I wasn't aware of those splits specifically, but Gold Coast were wrapped. They picked him up in a pre-draft selection. They could choose someone before the draft even went through, an academy player, and apparently he was just an absolute standout where they didn't even have to pay anything for him. They got him for free before the draft. Which, so you can't actually attribute a draft number to him, which is why I think it slides under the radar, or people don't give him as much credit as they should. But I believe, right, that he was a pre-draft selection and was highly rated as far as in the academy.
Fair enough. So no, I don't agree with that.
Go on, why?
I also feel like JD's Googling my and checking my credentials on this.
No. I haven't checked. I've totally believed your Alex Davies story. Should I search this up?
No, as in I legitimately, I was like, I swear, I read that last week because I was looking at him for a keeper league. So I was like,
I haven't heard that, but I'll say that's not saying much. So so the thing is with Gold Coast, and I think this is probably proven more with them specifically than any other team, is that they have traditionally run just those 3 midfielders as their primary midfielders more than any other team in the competition. So last year, Touk Miller had 80% CBAs overall for the year, Matt Rowell 81, and Noah Anderson 72, with Swallow being 39%. So they're very much 3 midfielders and then a bit part rotation. Alex Davies ended up having 23%. I don't see them reducing those numbers for those other top 3 at all. Potentially even Noah Anderson might get more CBAs is the only thing I can see there. I think the ones that come out to accommodate for guys like Alex Davies. So Braden Fiorini had 23% last year. Davies did have 23%. So if he's getting more, it's at the expense of guys like Fiorini, guys like Swallow, not of Touk. And so that might be a little bit of a false economy, because there were games where Touk CBAs actually did drop when they had Davies in there. I think overall over the season, that's not necessarily going to be the case. So that the stat does exist. Obviously, I'm not saying that it doesn't exist, but I don't think that it's going to be the same this year based on a different midfield split because the CBA rotations will change slightly.
Are you saying are you saying it's a false correlation, Chris, or like a false positive, or
it's not based on last season. I'm just saying that it will be a different mid setup this year. So Fiorini's obviously they've just decided he's not in the best 22, like straight up.
And no one wanted him either, did they? They were trying to move him on. Collingwood and a few rumours didn't happen.
Yeah, there was a late. I actually would have loved Fiorini at the Pies, to be completely honest. But Fiorini was our backup for Tom Mitchell, so we got Tom Mitchell, and then that sort of fell through.
Better than Warple, wasn't he? He was a backup for the Richmond guys, wasn't he, or something? Yeah.
Now, obviously, Flanders got 18%. I don't think that is going to happen. So in the preseason game, Flanders got 18%. So I don't think that is necessarily going to happen. But yeah, in the Davies got 59% in the same game. I can't see him getting anywhere near that. And then obviously Rao 76%, and where was Anderson's? Anderson. Why can't I see?
Rao 76, Swallow 62, Davies 59, Anderson 47, Fiorini 29, so Flanders 18, Hollands 9.
Yeah, so not a reflection of exactly how their mid split is going to be this season, unfortunately. So, I can't see them running away from Noah Anderson in the centre bounce, which would mean that someone's going to have to make way, because I do think that Alex Davies is a best 22 player, and you are wasting him if you're not using him in that rotation. I actually am of the opinion that they do need to have more guys running through there. That could be something, but so far they haven't shown the propensity to do that. So I'm not sure
they were the only team that had 2 players above 80% CBAs last year.
Exactly, yeah. And
easy to match up on too.
They're still going to roll through with Witts as a number 1 ruck. They're not going to run a 2 ruck system. So they're sort of going against the grain to what teams are doing, which is more guys through there, more midfielders. They're trying to get, say, a Flanders who's not necessarily a CBA mid to be that extra around the stoppage. Mm-hmm. Last year they tried with Rankin as the extra around the stoppage in sections of the year. So that's how they're sort of offering that they're still maintaining their 3 mix, and then guys that come in around that are coming up from the half forward line or into the wing and the extra stoppage. So it's just a little bit different for me. I just don't necessarily agree. But yeah, I still have him averaging similar numbers to last season. I really like him as a pick, and I've really toyed with the idea, but obviously the hamstring. I had him in my team before the hamstring, and then I've just sort of really cooled on it because I don't know what his initial output's going to be like. So, yeah.
Nice of you to use our spreadsheet there, JD.
No, I've got my own.
That's a joke.
Yeah, okay. All right, have you got the same stat in there, do you?
Oh, yeah, no, as in just, how good are like CBAs and all stats in general?
Great, love them. So I just, Chris, just to press on this point a little bit more, I'm a little bit confused after hearing you talk about Miller, like why you have him ahead of Oliver. So like Miller won 20 last year, Oliver won 27. Like where are they ending up in averages this year that you have?
Because I don't think Touk's role changes at all. So I don't see there's a reason or need to change his role in the midfield. At all.
So you think he goes 80% CBAs again, coming off the hamstring doesn't bother you? You don't think he gets eased in? There's no solo games. There's no re-injury risk.
Nah, not really. Well, obviously, there's always a re-injury risk.
Yes, definitely. The most likely time to re-injure a hamstring is right after you've done a hamstring. Yep,
right.
Sure.
Is that Jake Stringer talking?
Having said,
that's not medical journals, but I mean, Stringer's a great case study.
So I have an inside source, a player at the actual club who has verified. It also could be a friend of a brother of a sister or a cousin's friend. Yeah. But so pre the injury, Touk was absolutely killing everyone on the track. In terms of time trials, fitness, ability, everything. Like he was their plan going into the season. So that may have slightly changed, obviously, with the hamstring.
But their plan was physios off the track.
their plan was, no, this guy's going to be our number 1 midfielder again, because he was absolutely destroying everybody else. So that was not a question to me at all. It's just now, yes, that may have delayed the plan may have delayed a couple of weeks for whatever reason, just because of his injury, and they might try and ease him back in. But that is the only question mark, not necessarily his role, unless they completely throw that whole thing out the window that they had planned for the season because of his hamstring. So,
Well, an injury concern can do that. Have you never heard of variable change, Chris, where they have a plan and then an injury happens and then maybe they have to actually change?
Viney's
that
injured
doesn't
and not
exist.
going to play, and they're still going to make Oliver start off halfback for like 30
Yeah,
seconds.
correct.
Yes.
And this is where Chris's
No, but he
prejudice comes
plays.
into play.
They play the Dogs in round one. Like he's went 96 and 112 his last 2 games. I'm really worried.
That's a moment's silence for Chris's poor judgment. I think we're kind of down to the final 2, are we? Is there a sneaky in there?
No, Oliver was my third. Yep,
So we're pretty much down to then, I believe, Laird and Bontempelli, which I think is really high on all of our lists, funnily enough. And probably one of the only midfielders I think that we're all actually expecting to rise up from that sort of top 8 or bracket up into that real top echelons of going close to 120. So now the big question is JD, I'll get you to go your 1 and 2 just because we are at that point in time. And I'm not sure if we're going to get any surprises as to a number 1, but what have you got?
Marcus.
Oh, you got Marcus at the 1.
You got him. You got him number 1.
I've got him number 1. This is my heart overhead decision. Marcus is gonna. I'll try and back it with some stats.
I thought he was going to say Dunkley, but I respect that.
I mean, he would be if we had Dunkley as an option. He'd be in there. I got Dunkley 1, Marcus 2, and then Laird 3. Who doesn't love Marcus? Firstly, who doesn't want to see him succeed?
Supercoach loves Marcus.
Supercoach does love Marcus. I have confirmed that at the Champion Data headquarters, they do have a +10 button for Bond, and they've installed a new one this year for Goulden next to him. So expect to see some funky scores.
And there's a shrine of Bontempelli on one wall and then another for Goulden on the other. Just absolutely living large.
No, so speaking of mids that didn't have many CBAs last year but still scored well, Bont is the other one. He had 58% CBAs last year, and he's kind of had the opposite preseason talk to Oliver, especially in the last week, that now with the added forwards that they have there, Lob and whatnot, a bit of a healthy forward line, they've got the youngsters coming through as well. He's not going to be needed there as much. He can just be unleashed in the midfield, and that makes a lot of sense with Dunkley going. So I see Bont getting more time on ball in the midfield and just absolutely racking it up this year in terms of scoring and output, and I'm just on board for that adventure.
I think not picking him is a huge risk. I see teams going without Bont, and I just go, but why?
But why?
Like, what possible reason do you have? Because it's not it's a huge negative pod. Like, it's a big risk.
I feel like they're people that haven't been playing Supercoach that long and have never had to be on the outside looking in,
watching Bont play.
I don't think his ownership's that high either. Like, is it 30s or so? Like, I don't think it's crazy high where you're like you feel like you have to, which is why maybe there is some conjecture or why people are maybe passing on him.
I honestly don't remember the last time I looked at a team from like the Fantasy Tech TV community didn't have him. I think he's been like in all of our sides since day one.
I think I had him, and then if I was going for 3, I was fading. But again, I still really rate him, and why would you not pick someone who is probably going up in average, and particularly that? But now the stats that I did look at early in the preseason. Okay, so not that
32.
high. Yeah,
that's super low.
Thanks, Chris. I also like to give facts out 2 seconds after someone else.
I mean, like Oliver's at 41% for reference, and Tom
keeps dropping. I like it.
33%.
With every AFL.com article, Oliver drops another 3%. I see.
Yes, pretty much is exactly what's happening. Now Bontempelli, when he did have those higher CBA games, we had a look. Pretty much it was more of a like CBA, and then it was like a scatter graph. And pretty much when he hit over that percentage mark, his baseline scores actually improved 5 to 10 points. That's his base, which means when he had some of those lower games, you saw that a little bit of still a high ceiling, still scored really well, but there was just a little bit more fluctuation from high to low. Whereas what we saw is when he did have the high amount of CBAs, that low disappeared. That low actually then, so that made his base instead of, that actually made his base more like your 9,500 at worst, which is, and then the high ceiling still there. You're still going the 140s, 150s. which is where I do see his average falling into that 120 bracket or getting close to, just because that base will improve. His ceiling's still going to be there. He's still very impactful, and he'll still go forward and kick goals and the rest of it when he pushes forward. So, like from stoppages. So that just makes it a no-brainer. Yeah, improve your floor, have a good ceiling, and I think it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, absolute no-brainer. I mean,
He's number two for me, though. Number two for me, though. Sorry.
My only question is like how far?
Number three.
I guess is probably the thing. I actually have him at 2.
I've got him at 4. Sorry, boys.
You've got Bont at 4.
Yeah, so I had Laird, Clary, Touk ahead of him, and then Bont at 4, averaging 120.
Suspect. So yeah, I suppose again with Magneto, coined it again. It's like how much does he get there? Because obviously 58% last year. He hasn't shown so far this season that he's willing to play anyone more than 60%. Outside of Libber got what 60? What did he get? 60.
McRae had 64% last year, and then Libber was at 60%.
Yeah, but in the preseason game this year, let's have a look here.
Because that's a representative sample of CBAs. For the
I know, but yeah, given that they were all there, you sort of do get a little bit of an idea. So he had Libber had 69, Bont had 64. So there's a 6% increase right there. Smith had 62, McRae had 59, and then Treloar had 46. With that's it in terms of
what happens with Treloar across the course of the year is going to be interesting.
Definitely. And is he played off half back when he's not in there? Is he played off the half forward line? Do we see some DPP action from Treloar, which I do think we will? Is his scoring going to go up enough to warrant a selection in those lines? I actually don't. Obviously, his injury history is well schooled, but could be a decent pick later in the year. So look, is 5% enough to go to? I've actually got him pegged at 125. That's where I think that he would get to. So that mid 120 bracket at being number 2 or potentially even number 1 at that price. I think we had McRae one year was number 1 midfielder with 123 or something similar. So it's still low 120s could be a number 1. If it's more like 10% uptick that he gets, 10 to 12%, and he's getting close to 70% CBAs, I think he's an absolute clear number 1. I just don't know if he can get up to that level. But it'll be interesting because, like you said, that forward line, it's already stacked. He did mention that they can essentially run 4 tall forwards if they really want to in the forward line. Why? Why do you need to? That doesn't make any sense to me.
I think it was 3 on, 1 on the bench, and then rotating that way. So still 4 players.
Keeping your height.
I think 3 on. It wouldn't surprise me if he was number 1 either, JD.
Yeah. I think he had a sore adductor, right, last year as well, which I think held him back a little bit at times. So hopefully he's injury-free. He's also at the age where he's 27 turning 28. So this is really peak of your powers type age. I think this is the best possible situation for Bont that isn't required up forward. The other highest, one of the highest CBA mids is gone, injury-free. So I'm super duper high. And maybe this is just because I'm so high on him as a pick that I've gone with number 1 rather than me seeing logically Laird probably won't go backwards that much, and Marcus going up 15 points in a year is probably not realistic, but I'm going to put him in there anyway. Let's reach for the stars.
But if you're backing him as your captain with a Dunkley VC or vice versa, then you'd be backing them in, and both I think should do really well. It wouldn't surprise me. And again, we look at him as one of the best players in the competition, and now the scene is set up to actually let him be the number 1 player in the competition. And I don't think it would shock anyone if he just tore it apart. And
one final stat maybe. In wins last year, 124 and losses 106. Do you have the Dogs doing better this year in terms of win-loss?
I do. I think they're a much stronger team or across the park. Defense looks to have steadied up. It'd be nice if they got Gardner back because he was actually very serviceable. Liam Jones, though, seems to have just slotted right in there. I don't know how that's going to pan out long term. Darcy is an absolute elite marker of the football, and I wonder what he can bring to that forward line if they play him there. I was more leaning towards them playing him at centre half back because I thought that his skill set was probably more utilised there. And then I was like, well, if they play him forward, why not move Norton back to centre half back? But it doesn't seem like they're going to play that. They're going to go. They're 2 really strong marking talls in the forward line. Bold, but it could really pay off.
I'm going to say that if he's playing midfield, it's kind of redundant, that stat, or a bit irrelevant, because So Jack McRae last year averaged 3.1 points more in losses than wins at a 117.4. So as a forward, a midfielder that rests forward, I mean, Petrarca, I think, had a 36-point variance where he averaged 36 points less in losses compared to wins, because when you're losing, the ball's not going to be anywhere near the forward line as much. And you're not going to be getting the score assist and all of the other points that go with scoring. So if he's not playing forward, then I don't really see that being an issue as much, because he's still going to be around the CBAs, or if there's a ball, once there's a bounce, he's in that mix to get the clearance and get those points instead of waiting in the forward line for a ball that never comes.
I mean, if they have a potent forward line and he does float forward times, it's going to be,
so good.
Like some of the best mismatches you've ever seen.
Yeah,
it's going to
imagine
be
that, like going fourth tall or something, rather just looking at him, and you're like some young player or something first year, and you're like, "Hi, can I get your autograph?" Like,
he's
crap.
playing on Lachie midfield out of the goal
defender. Square. Yeah, exactly. It's a shame that he can't play the Dogs, because that's probably where he gets like the Caleb Daniel match.
He would. I was going to make that joke, but then I realized I couldn't. I'm glad you did.
Yeah. Wasn't there one like Mason Cox or something on him? It was so funny.
Yeah, and he probably split it, to be fair.
Well, to be fair, it was probably a ruck contest.
I mean, look, I know that Bevo doesn't care about individual awards, but you got to say that he's probably, in the games that he's going to play midfield, he's going to get a lot of Brownlow votes. Now, he's going to be a favourite for the Brownlow betting pretty much most of the year. If your captain of the club comes to you and says, "Hey, I might be a smoky here for the Brownlow, maybe we need to play me more in the midfield at some stage," I don't think Bevo's going to care, but that could be a serious consideration. So, I don't
know. One last Marcus Bonham really fun fact. He's in rare air of players that took kick-ins and attended ruck contests last year.
Wow. Cool. Who was the other one?
I actually would have to go back and check. I'm sure there's one other, but I just can't think of who it is at the moment. It's a very weird group of attending ruck contests and kick-ins.
Like Tom Green maybe had one.
I don't think Green had any kick-ins, and I don't think Cripps had a kick-in either, so it wasn't another mid. Anyway, leave it with me. I'll see if I can find out who it was.
That's fine. That's cool.
Maybe
I like it.
Blitz would be the obvious one.
Oh, yeah.
Caleb Daniel probably had kick-outs and a ruck contest.
Blitz didn't have any kick-ins last year, so anyway, leave it with me. I'll figure out who it was.
Caleb Daniel. Interesting.
So I suppose the last one that we all have, which I have at one, is Laird. So JD, you've got him just basically around that mark anyway.
Yeah.
So obviously, just don't see a reason or a role change or anything like that. He's still gonna pad it up.
Laird's going to keep doing Laird things. There's no reason for him to get tagged. I don't really see anyone pushing him out of the midfield. You will get some progression of guys like Barry and that. But yeah, I mean, Laird should just keep carrying on. And obviously, he had a slow start last year as well. He missed the first couple of games, then had a 93 on return. And then after that point was basically untouchable for the rest of the year. So, look, there's no reason why he can't go back-to-back and go around the 125 to 130 mark. And I totally understand why a lot of people are choosing him over Oliver at the moment, despite Oliver's decorated history.
Well, I think that the one thing to support it as well, Oliver with the change of role and the rest of it that's spoken about, whereas Adelaide have actually gone out of their way to publicly talk about sending others out of the midfield mix. Keys playing more forward, and then going, maybe like Rochelle or
Sloane's not playing midfield. He's going to play.
Yeah, he's not playing either. So, and then like Rankin, etc.
Crouch breaks his leg.
Yeah.
The Sandford's really upset. But even those other fringe players might come in and do little bit parts of it, but the bulk of it is still going to be Laird and Berry, and especially when they are your two biggest tacklers or two in the competition, even.
Yeah.
They're quite happy to go, well, if we're not going to win this clearance, you aren't either. And then we'll just go again, and then we'll beat you the second time. So I really quite rate them for it. And I think just that stability in his role is why I'm happy to pay up. And I don't like paying up expensive prices for everyone. But at the end of the day, I'm like, this is someone that I want. This is someone who I'm going to use as a VC or C. So I'm okay with paying overs for a few people. And it's more of a fact that I know I want him, and do I want to pay over 600,000 to get him later, or do I just want to start him and then look for value elsewhere? So that's where my team kind of comes in. Whereas I was very fixed with Clary, and I was talking to a few people yesterday. I'm like, am I just being stubborn? And then the article came out, and I was like, I can't start him now. And then part of me is thinking, oh, you can be stubborn. But I'm like, well, when they already come out saying his role changed. Well, they're saying his role's changing. You then see the role change, and then they come out again the week before with the midfield coach saying his role's changing. And I'm like, 3 times, lucky. I should probably start listening. And that's where you talk about taking the ego out, because sometimes you get very stubborn and not listen to the stats and everything. And I do want Clary, so I'll just deal without him for 6 weeks or whatever, and then get him later. So, but yeah, led a good deal.
I like it. Anything else to add? I suppose at this point we probably go through our 10. JD, do you want to lead it off with your 10 in total, starting at number 1, buddy?
Starting from 1. Okay, so Bont, Laird, Oliver, Miller, McRae, Steele, Neale, Merrett, Brayshaw, and then Josh Kelly.
Excellent. I have Laird, Bont, Touk, Neale, Oliver, Kelly, Green, McRae, Brayshaw, and Steele, rounding out my top 10.
And I have Laird, Clary, Touk, Bont, Neale, Parish, Mills, McRae, Zerrett, and Jelly to round out the 10. We don't have Swiss's top 10 because, let's face it, we got the best 3 minds right here. So,
who's at 11? Just out of curiosity, I want any discussion. Just want to know who.
I had Cripps.
Who did I have at 11? I think I had Steele at 11, and then I had Brayshaw at 12.
Okay, yeah, I had Cripps at 11 too. Right.
Yeah. Just unfortunately, just with that, when it's a loaded midfield, his scoring drops off. That's it. That's the only reason. If they have less numbers rotating through that midfield, then that's fine. But with obviously, it was with Chera, Kennedy, Cripps, Walsh, and Hewitt all in the same midfield. Cripps's numbers just tanked and they died hard. So, not interested. Best case scenario is you got to hope for Carlton injuries, which is probably likely to happen, to be fair.
And he's one of the ones at risk because the problem.
Exactly right. Yeah. Awesome.
Interesting.
Fantastic pod, guys. I had an absolute ball. So thank you very much to JD. And
yes.
Ben, maybe.
We recovered ourselves well. That first few minutes is a highlight for sure.
When we talked about Setterfield, was that the highlight?
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Chris. No, but just absolutely losing the plot and then regaining composure to kind of keep going. Sometimes I think, we don't really cut or try and edit anything. So it's like, let's just keep it rolling. Who cares? It's all there.
Roll the tape.
Yeah, roll the tape.
Editing's far too hard for content that's going to be outdated in 2 weeks. So just upload and away we go.
See you later.
Agreed. Outdated in 2 days. Even sometimes you do a pod and then you're like, I'll do it tomorrow. And next minute someone breaks their leg. I'm like, fuck, I just spent 20 minutes talking about this guy.
and an hour and a half editing.
Yeah. You don't have that pleasure, do you, Chris?
And I love the fake confidence I get a week out from the preseason. Team's locked in, it's not moving, and then 3 days later, it's completely different. I've gone through instruction whoops.
Rat R2 is a thing. Just trust it now. It wasn't a thing last weekend, but this weekend it is.
And the more you speak, Chris, the more we go downhill. That's it. We're going to wrap it up from here. JD, lovely to have you as well.
Thanks for having me, boys.
Let's keep these traditions alive. I think we just each year, I think we just buy in and chip away. But we'll talk to you again soon. Thank you, JD. Thank you, Chris. And let us know who you're liking. Who is in that top 10 that you really rate? Do you have Josh Kelly? Do you hate our top 10s? Do you hate Parish? Let us know. And Bontempelli, number 1, who agrees with number 1 or number 2. And that's it. We'll talk to you again soon. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.